Great. We're going to get started. So thank you all so much for paying attention. We'll have coffee and tea immediately afterwards. But I'm very excited to be moderating this panel. I'm going to structure it so that everybody has roughly 5 minutes to talk about their experiences in Uzbekistan so far, the work that they're doing, the work that they may be doing going forward. I think we'll hear a pretty broad variety of relationships with regards to the development of the banking sector there. To begin, myself, I'm very excited to be here. My personal experience with doing business in Eurasia in many ways began in Uzbekistan when I was a graduate student. I bought lots of slippers, tapachki, in Nukus and brought them back here to London where I sold them at Camden Market and it helped pay for my thesis. So it's very good to see so much interest come into doing business in Uzbekistan, and I think we'll really hear how much the market has changed. Banking relationships back then certainly were not available to me, were not available really to the people who I was working with in Uzbekistan either. The currency, obviously, reform has been quite a significant part of that, but I think we're going to be able to hear here quite a good insight into how the banking sector has changed in the last few years, the opportunities that will bring to others, as well as the opportunities that will bring to the Uzbek people itself. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to begin with Alkis, who's representing the EBRD, hear a little bit about their experience there, how they've experienced things. Then we'll move on, hear statements from the other panelists. I'll then pose my own questions, use the chair's prerogative for a few minutes, and then open it up to other questions. So.
Sorry, my apologies. I should mention that one of the speakers will be speaking in Russian. I completely forgot to mention, if you do need a headset, there in that corner, please raise your hand and one of my colleagues will bring it to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Alkis, over to you.
Okay. This works? Yes, it does. I would like to make a small bridge with the previous panel, which the title was Doing Business in Uzbekistan, and I wanted to say that we heard a lot about the macroeconomic stability. We get about the reforms in labor issues from my friend Jonas Astrup. We heard about media freedom, investment climate, privatization challenges, and human capital. All this to say that these factors have been crucial and very much appreciated by the EBRD, which restarted operation in Uzbekistan 2 years and a few months before, so from mid-2017. And we've been following these developments, and we are convinced that Uzbekistan is reforming, the changes are irreversible, and it's now time to be in Uzbekistan. I want to take the relay from what Minister Laziz Kudratov mentioned, first mover's advantage, just to say, yes, it is the time for you to look into Uzbekistan with a positive mindset. I would like to congratulate for your participation in this conference and your interest in Uzbekistan, your instinct to invest or trade with or go to explore is correct. And to put some proof, the EBRD has invested already €1 billion since we started, and we went across many sectors. We invested in energy, in infrastructure, but also in private sector. We support private sector. It is #1 priority of our country strategy that covers what EBRD is doing and will be doing for the next 5 years. And we do support private sector either directly or through banks. So this panel is about banking sector reform and what we do with banks and how do banks progress in the country. I will leave a lot of things to the other panelists, but just to say that EBRD is working with 8 banks, 4 state-owned and 4 private banks. We extend credit lines to them and trade facilitation limits, as well as we provide technical assistance. Why we do all that? Because we want to access the real economy. We use banks as financial intermediaries to channel funding that might not be otherwise available to the local enterprises, to SMEs and large corporates. We want to play. We play an additional role to what the banking system plays already in Uzbekistan. And we are able, we have been, we are proud enough to have provided a few credit lines also in synthetic sum, because we do believe that the economy has to de-dollarize eventually, and we are working on that, and we are very much into cooperation with the authorities. We want to support capital markets development. We want to support banking sector reform. In the banking sector reform, there are many things that are happening right now. There are reforms that touch on the privatization of the banks. So there are a few banks that have been identified and they're put in government programs for privatization. And we would like to be part of these efforts to advise the government on how best to privatize, to exchange notes, and maybe be an investor ourselves together with other strategic investors or through listings. We will see. The methodologies are yet to be clarified. We also want to mention that one major reform is that the bank system will undergo is that the assets of many state-owned banks that have been assets created after directed lending with concessionary terms will soon be removed from the balance sheets of the banks and will go to the UFRD. There is a presidential decree saying this, and that will really open the way for a more efficient banking system reform. So I will stop to that point, and I'll be waiting for your questions at the end of it. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I think it certainly was the big green signal for many to Uzbekistan when the EBRD returned to the market, certainly from sort of the financial market sector. Next, I'd like to turn to Mr. Babur Papiev, the chairman of Orient Finance Bank. I'm very excited that we have a representative of such a high level from the local banking industry there to hear a little bit more about how the changes of the last few years have impacted the ability to do business there for the bank and what opportunities may be coming forward. Thank you.
Спасибо большое за приглашение, спасибо большое за внимание. Хотелось бы в первую очередь поблагодарить всех организаторов данного мероприятия. Хотелось бы вкратце остановиться, что дало нам эти реформы именно в банковской сфере и вообще реформы в экономическом плане в Узбекистане для, можно сказать, такого частного коммерческого банка, как Orient Finance Bank. На сегодняшний день в первую очередь нужно отметить, что вот либерализация валютной политики дает мощный импульс не только всей экономике, но и банковской системе. И именно банкам есть такая возможность привлекать много клиентов. На сегодняшний день эта либерализация дала такую возможность корпоративных клиентов привлечь в банковский сектор и вывести их из тени. Это первое. Второе, что бы я хотел сказать, это вот прекращение контроля со стороны государства и со стороны Центрального банка, контроля курса валют. То есть у банков появилась возможность самим определять курс, исходя из своих каких-то рисков, исходя из спроса и предложения. Следующее, что бы я хотел сказать, это возможность дистанционно обслуживать наших клиентов. Действительно, вот сегодня было много сказано насчет последних 3 лет, что у нас происходит в экономике страны и что вообще происходит в банковском секторе. До этого у нас не было возможности дистанционно обслуживать наших клиентов, исходя из каких-то решений Центрального банка или государства. На сегодняшний день это дает возможность клиентам, дополнительную возможность, сидя дома, обслуживаться и решать какие-то свои вопросы, не приходя в банк. Следующее, что я хотел сказать, это возможность самостоятельно определять свою бизнес-стратегию. Раньше коммерческие банки, будут они частные или государственные, у них была одна стратегия привлекать, то есть стараться привлечь вклады населения и максимально помогать компаниям в кредитовании. Сейчас такой задачи не стоит. Каждый банк определяет свою бизнес-стратегию, исходя из своих каких-то интересов. Все эти реформы, конечно же, заставляют нас задуматься о будущем. Есть определенные вызовы. Это вызовы со стороны участников нефинансового сектора, компаний нефинансового сектора, финтех-компаний. Появились с возможностью доступа на банковский рынок иностранных участников. Есть определенные вызовы со стороны наших иностранных партнеров. Вы наверняка все в курсе, что открылся доступ для иностранных коммерческих банков. И здесь вот есть представители компании банка Tbc, есть уже открылся филиал Халык банка казахского. Это тоже в определенной степени для нас вызов. И сегодня с возможностью дальше развиваться есть еще и такой вызов, что вот у нас есть конкуренты, как компании нефинансового сектора, так и вот зарубежные компании, которые намного развиты в технологическом смысле. У нас существует определенный технологический голод, с которым сейчас сталкиваются многие коммерческие банки. Но это, с другой стороны, для нас является определенной возможностью для того, чтобы вот эти вот свои конкурентные преимущества развивать более быстрее, чем надо. Вот я думаю, это вкратце то, что я хотел сказать, что дали нам вот эти вот реформы в экономическом плане, в банковском секторе. И я думаю, что пока все. А дальше будем готовы отвечать на ваши вопросы. Спасибо.
Спасибо вам. Thank you. I certainly think it would be interesting to hear quite a bit more about some of the technological changes that are going on. So next I'll turn over to John Schlesinger of Temenos. It'd be very interesting to hear about your experiences in the country, some of the sort of back-end reforms, just changes that are going on with the piping of the banking system itself.
Yes. I work for Temenos. We're a banking software company, and we have this unique relationship with our banks, 800 of them using our core banking software around the world, which is we manufacture the product that manufactures the bank's product and distributes the bank's product. So if the bank was a car manufacturer, we'd be both the factories and the distribution agents. I've had the pleasure of speaking at conferences on digitization in several emerging markets. And I think the word that's crucial is leapfrogging. Just like when mobile technology came along, just as Eastern Europe was coming into the European Union and others, they were able to leapfrog the technology. Instead of laying landlines, they went straight to mobile. And it's an interesting fact, which I've actually checked, and it's true, that more people in the world now have mobile phones than have toothbrushes, right? We were lucky to be the software that manages the accounts for M-Pesa in Kenya. So M-Pesa is mobile money, and 70% of the GDP of Kenya now goes through M-Pesa every year. 24 million Kenyans are registered with the M-Shwari service that runs on our software at CBA Kenya. And that that system is going to extend to 100 million Africans over the next 5 years. So there is a huge opportunity in Uzbekistan, if the Central Bank of the Republic allows it, for Uzbekistan to leapfrog Western technologies in banking. Western technologies in banking are going through 4 changes at once, which is throwing everything up in the air, to the extent that at the end of last year, Citibank and Gartner both said that by 2030, 80% of today's banks will have gone. So the 4 changes are 3 banking and 1 technology change. So the first banking change is to move to open banking. So banking is the last major monolithic industry in the world. Every other industry, I can get to the service through third-party providers. It's only in the bank that I can only get to the bank through its channels. Right? And open banking, which has been triggered all around the world, is going to change that. And Uzbekistan has a chance now to be a leader in open banking if the central bank will allow it. That has lots of implications, not just mobile money, but also, for example, for the very large number of Uzbekistanis who work abroad. Open banking enables the branches of the Uzbekistan banks abroad to offer full-function banking by taking distribution as a service, which leads us to the second big change, which is technology, which is banking is moving to the cloud. So that means moving to shared infrastructure, platforms provided by third parties, and to a large extent, software provided by third parties. Across the world, starting in Asia Pacific, our pipeline for new banking systems has gone to software as a service. So we have software as a service. At the end of last year, we had 30 banks running on our software as a service. At the end of this year, we'll have 60, and at the end of next year, we'll have another 60. So there is a huge opportunity to leapfrog in open banking. I've already mentioned mobile money. The last thing I'll mention is instant payments. So you may be aware here in the UK, since 2008, we've had the ability to do a low-value payment, peer-to-peer or for merchant payments, in seconds. In the time it takes me to go from my bank on my mobile phone to the service I'm paying on the mobile phone, the money is already there. So it happens in seconds. Instant payments is a way for Uzbekistani banks to leapfrog the rest of the world, where instant payments, for example, is only now spreading in Europe with SEPA Instant, and it hasn't started yet in the US with FedNow. So it's another final leapfrog one. So I said there were 4 big changes. Those are 3 of them: the move to the cloud, move to open banking, the move to instant payments. The final one is low margin banking. So Uzbekistan has 30 fully regulated banks, 110 credit unions, and about 80 microfinance institutions. As foreign entrants come in who are achieving that low margin through 100% self-assistance and 100% straight-through processing, banks that aren't running in that way will be the 80% that go away. And the 20% that are left are the ones that are 100% self-assisted, as the chairman said. That's the online digital approach to banking, but assisted by intelligent agents, and 100% straight through, which means getting rid of all those people in the back office doing transaction processing, so 100%, and that requires robotic process automation. So the key to being a low margin bank is to rapidly introduce artificial intelligence capabilities in the front and back office of the bank. An area, of course, where Ukraine, Russia, Uzbekistan are experts. There are plenty of experts, world-leading experts, world-leading universities in the region. So that's the message from us for Uzbekistan, is you have an opportunity to leapfrog your Western competitors.
Great. Thank you so much. Finally, I'd like to turn to Mr. Georgi Shagidze from Tbc Bank to hear a little bit more about the work that they're doing. Specifically, Tbc has invested into an Uzbek payments processor, as well as looking to bring its challenger bank, already established in Georgia, its home market space, hopefully to the Uzbek market as well.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, we are one of the very few banks that have already committed to enter the market. And maybe in 2 words who we are, Tbc Bank is the largest financial group in the South Caucasus region. Our market share in Georgia is about 40%, and that would apply to most of the, to all pretty much important product segments and offerings. We are listed here on the London Stock Exchange since 2014. In 2016, we upgraded our listing to the premium segment of the stock exchange, and since 2017, we are included into the FTSE 250 index. There are many things that we are doing in the country, but one that differentiates us is clearly digital. The first is in the digital traditional mobile banking. We are ahead of the competition. In fact, this month we've been awarded by Global Finance the award of having the best mobile bank in the world. So that was quite an achievement, just to give this. The second one is that we have the first and the only mobile-only bank in the country. So this is something similar to Revolut here in the UK or Monzo, so that you get all the services without any branch. And then the third one, which we've launched recently, it's ecosystems. We are developing ecosystems, digital asset-light ecosystems, to increase touch points with our customers and clearly to have relationship data and then leverage with those. Now, having very well positioned, especially in the digital space in Georgia and in the region, clearly this is something that is easier to copy to other countries. And Uzbekistan attracted our attention in about 1.5, 2 years ago. And this is interesting for us because of many things that have been said. But I think I would still highlight the first is the reforms and the pace of the reforms that we are observing. And I would stress the reforms related to the currency, unpegging it, making it more liberal, making it more free. The tax reforms that we are seeing that has been done, and we understand that there is a next phase which will be introduced in the nearest future, and the reforms related to the banking sector, both related to the commercial banks and the central bank. So that would be the ones that attracted our attention. Clearly, we have many similarities from Georgia and in Uzbekistan, having similar history in the past, I don't know, 100 to 200 years. This is what attracted our attention. Now, what we are going to do in Uzbekistan is that we have applied for the greenfield license. We are doing it, and then there is an interest from our long-term partner EBRD, from IFC, and from local partner, it is Uzoman Fund, to do the venture with us in Uzbekistan. So that will be digital, next generation bank, mostly digital, but it will still have branches. But these branches will be, again, next generation smart self-service and assisted service branches. So we have applied for the license. We are in the mode of waiting for the respective authorities to approve it. But we have not lost time. We have invested already into technology, and then we have been doing some preparatory work there. We have opened the kind of exemplary branch, that prototype of the branch that we will be using afterwards, and also acquired 51% of PayMe. PayMe is a payment application. It's growing, very innovative. We are adding many new products, working with local banks. And the most important acquisition there is actually the fact that the management will be staying, or the founders will be staying with us to develop the business with us. So, and the final remark, maybe, as John, you said, the new markets tend to skip many legacy, and that's what attracts us from the perspective of digital in Uzbekistan. In Georgia, for example, we never had checks. We directly started to issue cards. So this is very attractive market from this point of view as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to lead off by asking two questions of the panel myself before I then open it up to the much better questions that I'm sure that all of you will have. So my first question is for Alkis and Babur, I believe. But one of the questions that I've always had looking at the Uzbek banking sector is the existing banking sector seems to be largely bifurcated in that you have certain large banks that have very close relationships with state-run enterprises. And then you have a relative lack of banking services historically for retail customers, small and medium-sized enterprises. So one, how does one ensure that there's enough competition amongst the banks for that business with the state-owned enterprises? That it's not just being given to sort of captured banks? And then secondly, how will the market develop for offering some more services to those small and medium enterprises and retail customers?
Thank you very much for the question. The answer is not very simple. You are right, and it was mentioned there are 30 banks in Uzbekistan, and out of these 13 are state-owned, and the rest are private, 17. And the state-owned banks have about 85–86% of the total banking assets, and 55% are, let's say, captured by the 3–4 largest banks, which are state-owned banks. So there is a structure. This structure is given. But there is competition because the country is reforming and is reforming fast, and the authorities have realized that the model of extending loans to state-owned enterprises for purposes of keeping them and keep working with them in the old fashion, the legacy model, is not sustainable. Not sustainable from budget perspective, not sustainable from modernization and opening the economy perspective. So there are a lot of changes right now happening, and there are dynamic private banks coming into the picture, getting market share. There is competition felt by the foreign banks that are interested to enter into the market, and of course the central bank is encouraging these banks to join. The doors are open, I understand, and the approach has to be such that the system is not really shaken, but it goes progressively to become more efficient. There are discussions about privatization. These are serious discussions. Our partner, IFC, has been invited to look into Ipoteka Bank already some time ago. And we, after the presidential decree, I think it was 4,300 was issued in the beginning of the year, we got an invitation to look into privatizing, into advisory services for privatization of Asaka Bank and Uzbekistan Bank and Aloka Bank, and these are indications that the appetite is for reform is there, the tendency is there, and the climate is also aligning towards achieving these goals. Now, there is also the latest reform I briefly mentioned in my introductory remarks, that many of the state-owned enterprises loans that have been channeled through the state banks will be taken off the balances of these banks. They will be removed to UFRD. That is the Uzbekistan Fund for Reconstruction and Development, a sovereign wealth fund that has been accumulating budgetary surpluses for some time. It's very strong. It has huge currency reserves. I think it's 18–20 billion US dollars equivalent. It's financial might. So a few of these loans will go there. I think that the authorities will have a strategy on how to achieve this, to make make this reform smooth and so that the system is not taken off balance. And that will ensure that the banks will be free to compete and do more commercial loans, more commercially minded lending. There is also, the banks are strengthening their risk and their lending capabilities. There are many providers of technical assistance, starting from us, but it also includes Asian Development Bank and the World Bank IFC, and other providers of technical assistance. So the minds of the people who are giving loans right now is changing to from providers of credit after some sort of programming to providers of credit for a better service of the sector, of the real sector of the economy. So that's where we are.
Great, thank you.
Спасибо большое. Хотелось бы тоже пару слов сказать насчет конкуренции между государственными банками и частными банками, и вообще насчет приверженности обслуживания корпоративных клиентов или частных лиц. На сегодняшний день даже вот те государственные банки, которые были когда-то созданы для обслуживания какой-то единой отрасли, одной отрасли, они сейчас трансформируются в банки для обслуживания не только корпоративных клиентов, но и физических лиц. И как было сказано, что сейчас все банки хором занимаются тем, чтобы создать условия для населения, чтобы они могли дистанционно обслуживаться. Создаются, какие-то банки работают над тем, чтобы создавать какие-то экосистемы, чтобы наряду с обслуживанием корпоративных клиентов не забывать о их сотрудниках. Создаются какие-то корпоративные продукты не только для самих предприятий, но и сотрудников этих предприятий. Мы работаем не только, вот сейчас как банк, вот было сказано моими коллегами, что через 5-10 лет банк, как вот классическая форма банковской системы, она будет исчезать. И наряду с появлением новых игроков, которым, нефинансового сектора, которым дается возможность оказывать какие-то ряд банковских услуг и предоставлять какие-то банковские продукты, нам будет очень сложно. Но вместе с этим вот те реформы, которые проводятся в Узбекистане, они дают нам возможность, чтобы идти в ногу с этим технологическим процессом, и мы могли бы перепрыгнуть наших коллег из зарубежных стран, где вот развивается. Поэтому, пользуясь случаем, хотел бы попросить всех присутствующих, тех, кто заинтересован работать в банковском секторе в Узбекистане. Мы заинтересованы не только в привлечении кредитных линий, но мы также заинтересованы в развитии каких-то новых технологических продуктов, услуг для населения, потому что рынок большой, и вот эта вот ниша, она остается все-таки пока не завоеванной. Поэтому приглашаем в Узбекистан, и я как вот представитель частного банка готов в этом оказать содействие. Мы вот разговаривали с господином Шлизингером, у нас есть переговоры, это вот компания Temenos, у нас есть тоже переговоры насчет внедрения новых технологий. Спасибо большое.
Спасибо. Great. We are running low on time, so I'm just going to very quickly put my question to the other two panelists and then take the other questions. But my question for Georgi and John, considering your work with the sort of upcoming technologies and the like, is traveling to Uzbekistan and trying to understand the saving habits of locals. One thing I've always sort of seen is there's a seemingly very large pool of unused capital that's not being put to use in markets, in part because people haven't had banking services or trusted them. So what is the one regulatory and/or technological change that can help put Uzbek's own capital to work to develop their economy?
So we heard in the last panel how important it is to educate women. And in fact, the Celtic Tiger in Ireland is now believed that it wasn't really the EU funds that made the difference. It was the increased participation of women in the workforce. And I believe that 70% of Uzbekistanis are not banked. So it would be a vast improvement to the economy of Uzbekistan to bank that 70%, which is why mobile money is so important. It's a first step in including 100% of the population in the banking financial system. It's the equivalent of moving from subsistence crop to cash crop. So I think banking the 70% is the answer I would give.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Well, it's a great question, actually. I think from the perspective of increasing penetration of the even current accounts and so on, the regulation allowing digital identification and verification of the customers would be the one that would especially help in the regions when you don't need to open the branch and would drive the cost down. So that's from the perspective of driving the technology cost down, then which is also helpful. Regulation allowing the clouds for the banks would be helpful. I know that this is not very easy to take, but over time, maybe this is something which can drive the cost down and therefore make the products accessible.
Great, thank you. I saw a hand earlier back there. I'm just going to take the questions that we have, put them into the panel, and then we will all break for coffee and tea. So from the gentleman back there.
Otabek Nuruddinov from SafeNetPay. SafeNetPay is the fintech company who is the first of a kind founded by people from Uzbekistan in UK and the first that is regulated, authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority here in the UK. My question is to Mr. Schlesinger. You have listed all of the amazing opportunities that the banking industry in Uzbekistan is facing, but what is your experience with the regulators? What are the signals coming from regulator to enable the banking sector to embrace those opportunities? And what the fintech companies like ours can expect in the development of the banking sector in Uzbekistan? Thank you.
Okay, well...
were there any other questions? I just wanted to take them all quickly before, if we have other questions? No? Thank you.
Well, I think I agree with Georgi that moving to shared infrastructure is an important step. If you don't want Google, Amazon, and Microsoft to do it for you, there's nothing stopping a consortium of banks, and maybe with the government's help, creating their own shared infrastructure, installing your own platforms as a service and offering that service within the country. The advantage of cloud is twofold. Firstly, that it's cheaper to share the infrastructure. So for a bank, we calculate that moving to elastic infrastructure has an immediate 12-fold reduction in infrastructure costs, just by going to elastic infrastructure. So sharing the infrastructure and getting started with your own cloud, if you're not going to allow Microsoft and Azure into the country, or if they don't want to come into the country, I think that would be absolutely crucial step. The second one is one I mentioned, which is for the central bank to provide a real-time gross settlement system for instant payments and join that worldwide system. The Bank of England here is rebuilding their real-time gross settlement system. It's 30 years old. So it's another example where you can put brand new infrastructure, new technology, and you'll be able to run the country's payment system at a fraction of the cost of what it costs here in the UK. So that would be the two things I'd suggest on the technology front. The threat that Mr. Papiev described is real. In every country of the world, the large merchants, that's the Alibabas, Tencents, and Amazons of the world, see the unbanked as a target. So I spoke at a conference like this in Karachi, and they've got Telenor and Tencent banking the unbanked in Pakistan. So it's very important that fintechs team with banks to manage that threat, to respond to that threat.
Great.